I remember that morning VY delay. It started with a mix of disbelief and adrenaline. I had always cherished the solitude of Mirror Lake, a secluded body of water nestled behind my family's property. It was our private haven, my escape from the chaos of modern Liffey, a place where the water shimmered like crystal and the only sounds were the gentle lapping of waves and the calls of distant birds. But that peace shattered when the HOA, in its relentless pursuit of control, declared my private lake community property. Most people would have called a lawyer. I did something bolder. I stocked the lake with alligators. And let's just say they haven't held a single pool party since. Mirror Lake had been in my family for generations, a hidden gem passed down from my grandfather, who taught me that true freedom lay where nature ruled. Tucked away on sprawling acres outside the city, the property was a blend of rustic charm and untamed beauty. Dense forests framed the lake, its reflective waters a mirror to the sky, undisturbed for as long as anyone could recall. I'm Ethan Carter, a third-generation landowner who's always lived life on my own terms. Growing up, I spent countless hours by the lake fishing with my father, swimming in its cool depths, and marveling at nature's raw splendor. That bond only grew stronger when I inherited the property as an adult. I built a modest cabin on the lake's edge, cultivated an organic garden, and even set up a small farm stand to share my produce with locals. But not everyone shared my reverence for this untouched sanctuary. In Willow Grove, the neighboring gated community rules were king. Their strict homeowners association prided itself on order and uniformity, a stark contrast to the wild spirit of Mirror Lake. At the heart of this rigid system was Linda Harper, known to many as HOA Linda. In her mid-50s, Linda had a knack for micromanaging every detail of community life: mailbox alignment, window blind patterns, even holiday decorations. Nothing escaped her scrutiny. To her, any deviation from the norm was an attack on the community's polished image. Linda's iron grip on Willow Grove always grated on me, but I'd learned to coexist. I valued the unpredictable beauty of life far more than a manicured lawn. That's why Mirror Lake was my refuge, a place where nature's chaos blended with serene solitude. So when Linda and the HOA declared my private lake community property, it wasn't just a petty dispute. It was an assault on my heritage, my freedom, and everything I'd built. The announcement came via a cold, official notice posted on my gate, citing vague zoning laws and community guidelines that, according to Linda, required all water bodies to be shared. The fine print was impersonal, leaving no room for negotiation. Most would have hired a lawyer, but I've always believed in handling things my way. I saw this as a challenge, a call to defend what was mine. Instead of legal battles, I chose a path as wild as it was unexpected. I decided to stock Mirror Lake with alligators. It wasn't a snap decision. I spent days researching, studying alligator behavior or habitat needs and legalities. I consulted local wildlife experts to ensure the plan was safe, responsible, and legal. I wasn't about to disrupt the ecosystem, but I was determined to send a message. My lake wasn't up for grabs. Willow Grove, with its cookie-cutter homes and rigid rules, stood in sharp contrast to my propertia levying canvas of freedom and nature. I'd always celebrated life's unpredictability, and now, faced with the HOA's overreach, I was ready to fight back in my own way. By midday, under a blazing sun, I released the first alligators into Mirror Lake. Sleek and powerful, they stirred the water, their eyes glinting with primal awareness. I watched them circle and settle, like ancient guardians claiming their territory. Word spread fast. Neighbors and HOA members were stunned. Photos and videos of alligator silhouettes gliding across the lake surfaced online. "No pool party for you," one comment read. The lake, once a tranquil retreat, was now a wild battleground. And as the news sank in, I knew the HOA's claim was about to be challenged in a way they'd never forget. This wasn't just a personal vendetta, it was a stand for individual rights and creative defiance. I wasn't merely protecting a lake. I was declaring that my freedom to enjoy nature on my terms couldn't be dictated by bureaucrats. With my scaly sentinels patrolling the water, the message was clear: try to take my lake, and you'll get bitten. The conflict hit a boiling point when I started getting calls and emails from neighbors. The HOA had publicly announced Mirror Lake's community property status, sparking outrage and support alike. For me, it wasn't just bureaucratic nonsense, it was a violation of my family's legacy. At the community meeting the next day, I faced a room of dead opinions. Some board members argued that shared water bodies were for the greater good. Others questioned the legality of claiming private land. Linda Harper defended the decision with her usual cold authority, insisting it benefited Willow Grove. But her words rang hollow to those who knew Mirror Lake's history and what it meant to me. In that heated atmosphere, I knew drastic action was needed. That evening back at my cabin, I pored over legal documents, zoning laws and wildlife permits, determined to prove my rights couldn't be erased by HOA decrees. Then the idea hit me. If most would call a lawyer, I'd do something bolder. I'd make the lake a levying symbol of defiance by introducing alligators. I contacted a trusted wildlife expert to discuss the plan. After thorough consultations and assurances that it was safe and legal, I ordered a small group of mature alligators suited for the lake's cool freshwater. I knew the risks. Alligators aren't pets and require careful management. But I was confident they'd serve as both guardians and a stark reminder that my lake was mine to control. As the delivery day approached, I prepared the lake, installing safety measures, enhancing the habitat, and setting up discreet surveillance. I planned to release the alligators gradually to ensure they integrated safely. I also posted cryptic updates on community forums, hinting at a bold move for property rights. Tension in Willow Grove was electric. Neighbors debated online, some intrigued by the idea of alligators, others worried about safety. Hashtags like the Gator Stand and the My Lake My Rules trended, fueling passionate discussions. The HA's claim was becoming a rallying point for those fed up with its heavy-handed rules. One afternoon, I gathered my EVY showing notices, community complaints, legal documents, and footage and prepared to go public. I scheduled a live stream by Mirror Lake's edge. When the camera went live, I stood tall, the water glinting behind me. "They say my lake is community property," I said, voice steady. "But I say the right to own your land is sacred. If you try to take that from me, you'll get more than you bargained for." I ended with a promise. Tomorrow, Mirror Lake gets new guardians. True to my word, the next morning, under a misty dawn, I released the alligators. Through my cameras, I watched them glide into their new home, moving with natural authority. Within hours, the community was buzzing. The alligators were here, and they weren't to be trifled with. Online, support grew. Neighbors who'd felt silenced by the HOA rallied behind me. Emails, calls, and comments poured in, shifting the narrative from bureaucratic overreach to a fight for property rights. My lake, my land, and the spirit tied to it were now at the heart of a community-wide debate. I knew this was just the beginning. In the days that followed, Willow Grove was transformed by Mirror Lake's new residents. Social media exploded with videos of alligators sunning on the shores or gliding beneath the surface. Hashtags like the Gator Defiance and the property rights now trended locally. The lake, once serene, was now a symbol of resistance, a testament that my property couldn't be seized by fiat. Local news caught wind, with reporters interviewing stunned residents and capturing the surreal sight of alligators patrolling the water. "It's like a MOVIE," one anchor said. A private lake turned fortress against HOA overreach. Inside the HOA, the response was chaotic. Emergency meetings were called, and debates raged. Linda Harper, the force behind the lake's takeover, scrambled to justify her actions. Leaked minutes revealed a split board. Some clung to the collective good, while others saw the claim as an abuse of power. One member was quoted, "If we keep ignoring NDVY dual rights, we'll lose this community." The cracks were showing. I kept the momentum going, sharing live updates and surveillance footage of the alligators, paired with messages from supportive residents. Online petitions to reverse the HOA's claim gained thousands of signatures. Legal experts chimed in, confirming the HOA's actions had no basis. The sentiment was clear: try to take a private lake, and you'll face nature and a determined owner. Linda's social media, once full of smug posts, became a battleground. Her defensive videos were drowned out by residents' counterclaims. "This is my lake," one comment read, echoing a growing chorus. Her attempts to control the narrative only amplified my message. The crisis peaked when the HOA announced a public hearing to settle Mirror Lake's fate. In the lead-up, Willow Grove buzzed with anticipation. Neighbors organized rallies, shared flyers, and mobilized online. Every post, video, and hashtag fueled a movement to reclaim property rights. As the hearing neared, I felt the weight of my family's legacy. My digital record of the fight, footage, documents, and resident testimony had become a rallying cry. Supporters, including local influencers, joined the cause. "This isn't just about a lake," one posted. "It's about levying free from bureaucratic bullying." The fight was no longer local, it was a defining moment for Willow Grove. I bolstered security, adding cameras and patrols around the lake. I met with neighbors to plan for the hearing, each conversation reinforcing our belief in property rights. The air was thick with tension, everyone knew we were on the cusp of history. The hearing took place on a crisp morning at the Willow Grove Community Center. The room was packed with HOA officials, law enforcement, community leaders, and residents. Councilwoman Sarah Bennett took the podium, her gaze steady. After reviewing all evidence footage of the alligators, legal analyses, and resident testimonies reached a unanimous decision, she began. The claim on Mirror Lake was baseless and driven by bias and overreach. The right to enjoy private property must be upheld. The room fell silent as she continued. Effective immediately, the HOA rescinds its claim on Mirror Lake and all related fines. We'll review the processes that allowed this to ensure it never happens again. Today we affirm that in Willow Grove, property rights are non-negotiable. Murmurs of agreement spread. A community advocate stood next. We're united to protect our homes and land, he said, voice ringing. This vote signals that Willow Grove rejects arbitrary control. We demand transparency, accountability, and the right to our property. The room erupted in applause. A county legal advisor presented the final evidence documents and reports proving Mirror Lake was private and the HOA's actions illegal. The board had no choice but to comply. Bennett closed. This resolution marks a new era for Willow Grove, where individual rights are honored. We stand for justice and freedom. Her words sealed the Tory. In the weeks after, Willow Grove transformed. News of the HOA's retreat spread, with headlines like "Freedom Restored" celebrating the win. Hashtags like the No More HOA and the Property Pride trended. Town halls drew crowds eager to shape a future valuing creativity and freedom. Our homes are our sanctuaries, one resident said, pride in his voice. The HOA and local officials acted fast. Director Michael Hayes and Officer Daniel Cole introduced training on ethical governance and resource management. Audits and transparent processes ensured accountability. We protect property and free expression, Cole said at a press conference. For me, the journey was personal and transformative. Stalking Mirror Lake with alligators reclaimed my land and sparked a movement. Neighbors found their voices, sharing stories of resistance. Linda's overreach was exposed, her influence fading as her past actions came to light, a warning of unchecked power. At a celebratory event in the town park, residents and leaders gathered under a banner reading "Unity, Freedom, Property Rights." Bennett spoke, "Today we celebrate Tory over arbitrary rule for every homeowner and free spirit." The applause was deafening. Mirror Lake's story, how I defended it with alligators, became a beacon for property rights. Each sunrise over Willow Grove promised a community where truth, justice, and freedom thrived. What began as my fight grew into a united stand against overreach, ensuring creativity and respect for property would always prevail.